The gunshot echoed through the valley like thunder, shattering the early morning calm of Willow Creek, Colorado, 1885. Lillian Aldridge stumbled through her father's front door, tears blinding her as she fled barefoot across the dusty yard, her cream-colored dress billowing behind her. Her father's drunken curses faded as she ran toward the hills, desperate to escape the life he'd arranged for her with the town's ruthless banker, a man 30 years her senior with 3 wives already in the cemetery. Quinn Winslow was tightening his horse's saddle when he spotted her a flash of white against the golden prairie grass. He just delivered a herd to the nearby ranch and was preparing for the long ride back to his modest spread when the sight of her distress pulled him from his task. Mounting his chestnut stallion in one fluid motion, he urged the animal toward the distraught woman, closing the distance between them with practiced ease. Lillian collapsed to her knees, her lungs burning from exertion, when she felt strong arms catch her before she fully hit the ground. Through her tears, she looked up into eyes the color of a summer sky, framed by a face weathered by sun and wind. "Whoa there, miss," the cowboy said, his voice gentle despite its rugged edge. "Whatever you're running from, you're safe now." She struggled against him, fear still propelling her forward. "Please, I have to get away. He'll find me." The cowboy's arms tightened around her, not to restrain but to reassure. "I'll never let you go," he promised, the words falling from his lips before he could consider their weight. "Not until I know you're safe." A rifle shot cracked the air and the cowboy's head snapped toward the sound. In the distance, 3 riders approached, led by a barrel-chested man with a shotgun and a face purple with rage. "That's my father," Lillian gasped. "And Mr. Hargrove, the man he wants me to marry." Quinn's jaw tightened. "Can you ride?" When she nodded, he lifted her onto his horse in one smooth motion, swinging up behind her. With a click of his tongue and a nudge of his heels, the stallion leapt forward, carrying them away from her pursuers. "I'm Quinn Winslow," he said, his breath warm against her ear as they galloped toward the pine-covered foothills. "Lillian Aldridge," she replied, clinging to the saddle horn. "But everyone calls me Lily." "Well, Miss Lily, I reckon we've got some decisions to make once we lose those men back there." They rode hard for nearly an hour, Quinn expertly navigating the increasingly rough terrain. Finally satisfied they'd shaken their pursuers, he guided his horse into a secluded clearing beside a stream. As he helped her dismount, Quinn noticed the blood on her feet for the first time. "You're hurt." Lily glanced down at her dirt-streaked, bleeding feet as if just realizing her condition. "I didn't have time for shoes." Quinn frowned, lifting her without warning and setting her gently on a fallen log. "Stay put." He retrieved a canteen and a small bundle from his saddlebag, then knelt before her. With surprising tenderness for a man with such calloused hands, he cleaned her wounds, tearing strips from his spare shirt to bandage her feet. "Why are you helping me?" Lily asked, watching his careful ministrations. Quinn didn't look up, focused on his task. "My ma raised me to never turn away from someone in need, especially not a lady." "I'm afraid I've brought trouble to you, Mr. Winslow." "Quinn," he corrected, "and trouble's an old friend of mine." Only when he finished did he raise his eyes to properly look at her. Her honey-brown hair had come loose from its pins, tumbling in waves around a face that, despite the tear stains and fear, possessed a quiet strength that stirred something in him. "Now," he said, settling beside her on the log, "perhaps you'd tell me what has you running barefoot across the prairie with men firing guns after you." Lily's hands twisted in her lap. "My father arranged for me to marry Theodore Hargrove tomorrow. He's the banker in town, owns half the businesses in Willow Creek, including the mortgage on our ranch. Father says it's the only way to save our land." "Hargrove," Quinn repeated, his expression darkening. "I know the name. Man's got a reputation that stretches all the way to Denver." 3 wives, all dead within 2 years of marriage, Lily said bitterly. "The last one fell down the stairs, the one before that got thrown from a horse. Nobody questions it because he owns the sheriff too." Quinn stood, pacing the small clearing, "And your father would give you to such a man. Since Mother died, all he cares about is the ranch and the whiskey. This morning I told him I'd rather die than marry Mr. Hargrove." Her voice caught. "He said that could be arranged if I dishonored the family. Quinn's hand instinctively moved to the Colt revolver at his hip. "That was his shot, I heard," Lily nodded. "He fired into the air, but—" She couldn't finish. "Well, Miss Lily, it seems to me you need a place to lie low while we figure this out." Quinn glanced at the sun's position. "I've got a cabin about 4 hours' ride from here. It's not much, but it's far enough from Willow Creek that your father and Hargrove won't find you easy." "I couldn't impose, you'd be doing me a favor," he interrupted. "Place gets mighty lonely with just me and my dog for company." Despite everything, Lily found herself smiling at his attempt to ease her burden. "You have a dog, name's Rusty, meanest-looking hound you ever saw with the heart of a lamb." Quinn's own smile transformed his face, softening the hard edges carved by sun and hardship. They rode double throughout the afternoon, Quinn pointing out landmarks and sharing stories of his 5 years as a cowhand before saving enough to buy his own small spread. Lily found herself relaxing against his solid presence, the rhythm of the horse and the rumble of his voice gradually easing her fear. The sun was setting when they crested a ridge, revealing a modest cabin nestled in a valley, smoke curling from its chimney. "Someone's there," Lily whispered, tensing. "That'll be Margaret," Quinn assured her. "My neighbor's wife. She checks on the place when I'm gone for more than a day. Good woman." As they approached, an elderly woman emerged from the cabin, wiping her hands on her apron. Behind her bounded a large, copper-colored dog who barked joyfully at Quinn's return. "Quinn Winslow, I expected you tomorrow," Margaret called, her welcoming smile faltering when she noticed Lily. "And you've brought company." Quinn dismounted, helping Lily down carefully to avoid putting pressure on her injured feet. "Margaret, this is Miss Lillian Aldridge. She's in need of sanctuary for a spell." Margaret's shrewd eyes took in Lily's disheveled appearance, the makeshift bandages on her feet and the fear still lingering in her gaze. Without a word, she stepped forward and wrapped an arm around Lily's shoulders. "Well then, sanctuary she shall have. Come inside, dear. I've just made fresh stew, and there's bread cooling on the windowsill." Rusty circled them excitedly, his tail wagging so hard his entire body swayed. Lily reached down to pet him, finding comfort in the simple, uncomplicated affection of the animal. Inside, the cabin was modest but meticulously kept. A main room with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen area, a curtained-off space that must be Quinn's bedroom, and a narrow staircase leading to what appeared to be a loft. "You'll stay in the loft," Quinn said, following her gaze. "I'll bunk down here by the fire." "I couldn't take your bed, it's settled," Margaret interrupted, ladling stew into bowls. "Quinn Winslow may look like a rough cowpoke, but his mother raised him right. Now sit and eat before you fall over." Over the meal, Quinn explained Lily's situation to Margaret, whose expression grew increasingly grave. "Theodore Hargrove," she spat the name like poison. "That man's a snake in human skin. My Henry did business with him once, nearly lost our farm when Hargrove changed the terms of their agreement after the papers were signed." "He won't find her here," Quinn assured them both. Margaret nodded decisively. "I should hope not, but we'll need to be careful all the same. Hargrove's not a man to let go of what he considers his property." She turned to Lily. "You'll need clothes, proper shoes. I've got a daughter about your size who's married and moved to California, left some things behind I can bring tomorrow." After Margaret departed with promises to return in the morning, Quinn showed Lily to the loft. It was small but comfortable, with a narrow bed covered in a handmade quilt and a small window overlooking the valley. "It's not much," Quinn said, setting down a lantern. "It's perfect," Lily replied sincerely. "I don't know how to thank you." Quinn shifted, suddenly awkward. "No need for thanks. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out our next steps." But when tomorrow came, it brought riders to the Valley. Hargrove, Lily's father, and 2 men Quinn recognized as hired guns from Willow Creek. Lily, looking out the loft window while dressing in the clothes Margaret had brought, spotted them first. "Quinn," she called, her voice tight with fear. "They're here." Quinn was by her side in an instant, his expression grim as he confirmed her words. "Stay inside," he ordered, checking his revolver before heading downstairs. Lily followed despite his instructions, unwilling to hide while he faced danger on her behalf. Quinn stood on his porch, Rusty growling at his side as the 4 men approached. "Winslow," Hargrove called, his jowly face red with exertion and anger. "I believe you've got something that belongs to me." "Nobody here belongs to you, Hargrove," Quinn replied evenly, his hand resting near his holster. Lily's father dismounted, swaying slightly drunk even at this early hour. "Lillian, get out here now. You've shamed this family for the last time." Lily stepped onto the porch, standing tall despite her terror. "I won't marry him, father, not today, not ever." "You ungrateful," her father lunged forward, only to freeze when Quinn's revolver appeared, aimed steadily at his chest. "That's far enough, Mr. Aldridge," Quinn said, his voice deceptively calm. "Miss Lily has made her choice clear." Hargrove laughed, an ugly sound. "And what, you think you're going to protect her? A nobody cowboy with a patch of worthless land?" He turned to his hired guns. "Get the girl." What happened next unfolded in seconds. As the gunmen reached for their weapons, Quinn fired a warning shot into the air. Rusty lunged forward, snarling, causing the horses to rear in panic. In the chaos, one of the gunmen was thrown while the other barely managed to control his mount. "Next one won't be a warning," Quinn promised, his aim unwavering. "This isn't over, Winslow," Hargrove snarled, struggling with his frightened horse. "That girl is promised to me, and I've got the papers to prove it." "Papers signed under duress aren't worth the ink they're written with," came a new voice. Margaret appeared on the path, a shotgun cradled in her arms. Behind her stood her husband Henry and their 2 grown sons, all armed. "Seems you're outnumbered, Mr. Hargrove," Henry observed mildly. "Might be best if you gentlemen were on your way." Hargrove's face contorted with rage, but even in his arrogance he recognized the shift in odds. "Aldridge," he barked at Lily's father, "control your daughter or consider your mortgage due in full by week's end." Lily's father paled but stood his ground. "She's no daughter of mine if she defies me this way. Do what you will with the ranch." The words cut through Lily like a knife, but she lifted her chin, refusing to show how deeply they wounded her. With final threats and promises of retribution, Hargrove and his men retreated, taking Lily's father with them. Only when they disappeared over the ridge did Quinn lower his weapon. "They'll be back," Henry warned, joining them on the porch, with more men, one of Margaret's sons added. Quinn nodded grimly. "I know, which is why Lily can't stay here." He turned to her, his expression softening. "I've been thinking about this since yesterday. You need to get far from Hargrove's reach, somewhere he can't follow." "I won't put you in further danger," Lily agreed, her heart sinking at the thought of leaving the sanctuary she'd found. "But I have nowhere to go, no money." "I do," Quinn interrupted. "I've been saving to expand my herd come spring, but this is more important." He hesitated, then plunged ahead. "I have a cousin in San Francisco. He owns a dress shop with his wife. They'd give you work, a place to stay until you get on your feet." The suggestion hung in the air between them. San Francisco was a world away from Colorado, a new beginning, but also alone among strangers. Margaret cleared her throat. "That's one option, but there's another." She glanced meaningfully at Quinn. "A woman traveling alone draws attention, a married couple less so." Quinn's neck flushed red above his collar. "Margaret, I wasn't suggesting—" "Well, maybe you should be," Henry interjected, exchanging a knowing look with his wife. "You two could marry, head west together. Start fresh where Hargrove has no influence." "I couldn't ask that of Quinn," Lily protested, even as something fluttered in her chest at the suggestion. "You're not asking, I'm offering," Quinn said quietly, surprising them all. He turned to face Lily fully. "I know we've only just met, and I'm not a man of means or sophistication. But I would protect you with my life, Miss Lily, and perhaps in time we might build something real together." The cabin fell silent, all eyes on Lily as she absorbed his words. In the span of 2 days, she'd fled a forced marriage, found unexpected sanctuary, and now was being offered another marriage, but one of choice, of possibility. "It wouldn't be real," she whispered. "Not at first." Quinn took her hands in his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "My offer and my promise are real. The rest can come in its own time if it's meant to." Lily searched his face, finding nothing but sincerity in his clear blue eyes. Something shifted in her heart, not love, not yet, but the seed of it planted in fertile ground. "Yes," she said finally. "I accept your offer, Quinn Winslow." They were married that afternoon by a circuit preacher who happened to be staying with one of Margaret's neighbors. The ceremony was simple, conducted in Quinn's cabin with the Millers as witnesses. Lily wore a blue dress borrowed from Margaret's daughter, with wildflowers in her hair. Quinn had shaved and donned his one good shirt, looking both uncomfortable and determined. The vows they exchanged were traditional, ancient words that had bound countless couples before them. But as Lily spoke them, looking into Quinn's earnest face, they felt less like a convenient arrangement and more like a promise she intended to keep. That night, true to his word, Quinn made his bed by the fire, leaving Lily the privacy of the loft. As she lay beneath the quilt, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the cabin settling around her, Lily realized that for the first time in years, she felt safe. The next week passed in a flurry of preparations. Quinn sold most of his livestock, keeping only his stallion, Scout, and 2 sturdy wagon horses. Margaret helped Lily piece together a trousseau of sorts from her daughter's abandoned clothes and linens. Henry and his sons assisted Quinn in building a small covered wagon, not as large as those that had crossed the plains in earlier decades, but sturdy enough for the journey to California. Throughout it all, Lily found herself watching Quinn when he wasn't aware the quiet competence of his hands as he worked, the kindness in his interactions with the Millers, the gentle way he spoke to his animals. He was nothing like the men she'd known in Willow Creek, who measured their worth in property and power. Quinn's strength lay in his integrity, in the respect he commanded without demanding it. For his part, Quinn found himself increasingly drawn to his new wife. Her resilience impressed him, as did her willingness to learn the skills she'd need for their journey. She never complained about the rustic conditions or the uncertainty ahead. Instead, she threw herself into helping wherever she could, cooking alongside Margaret, mending harnesses, even learning to shoot the small revolver Quinn insisted she carry. On their final night at the cabin, after the Millers had departed with promises to watch over the property until Quinn's return when you've made your fortune in California, Henry had said with a wink Quinn, and Lily sat before the fire, planning their route west. "We'll follow the southern trail," Quinn explained, tracing the path on a well-worn map. "Longer but safer this time of year, no mountain passes to worry about." Lily nodded, acutely aware of their solitude. For all the time they'd spent together this past week, they'd rarely been truly alone, always surrounded by the Millers or occupied with preparations. "Quinn," she said suddenly, setting aside the map, "I want to thank you for everything." He looked up, firelight reflecting in his eyes. "No need for thanks between husband and wife." The words hung between them, acknowledging the strange reality of their situation. "Married, yet strangers still. Even so," Lily persisted, "you've given up everything, your home, your livelihood, for someone you barely know." Quinn was quiet for a long moment, studying the flames. "I haven't given up anything I can't rebuild," he finally said, "and as for barely knowing you," he met her gaze, "I know enough." "What do you know?" she asked softly. "I know you're brave, braver than most men I've ridden with." His voice was low, thoughtful. "I know you're kind. I've seen how you are with Rusty, with Margaret. I know you're stubborn," he added with a slight smile. "Won't take help unless you can give something back." Lily found herself returning his smile. "And are these good things to know about your wife?" "The best," he assured her. "The rest your favorite color, how you take your coffee, what makes you laugh, that's the adventure ahead." They departed at dawn, the wagon loaded with the essentials for their journey and new life. Quinn had converted most of his assets to gold coins, sewn into the lining of his coat and Lily's petticoats, safer than paper money on the trail, he'd explained. Rusty trotted alongside as Quinn drove the wagon with Scout tied behind. As they crested the ridge that would take them out of the valley, Lily turned for one last look at the cabin, her first sanctuary, the place where her life had changed irrevocably. "We'll come back someday," Quinn said, reading her thoughts, "when Hargrove's no longer a threat." "I'd like that," Lily replied, surprised to realize she meant it. The journey west was arduous, as all such journeys are. They faced dust storms and river crossings, broken wheels and laming horses. They met fellow travelers, some friendly, some suspicious, all carrying their own stories and dreams toward distant horizons. Through it all, Quinn and Lily learned each other. She discovered his quiet sense of humor, the way he hummed tunelessly when lost in thought, his unexpected knowledge of constellations learned from an old Mexican vaquero. He found she was a natural with horses, could recite poetry from memory, and despite her privileged upbringing, adapted to trail life with remarkable ease. They slept side by side but apart in the wagon each night, the unspoken agreement of their unusual marriage maintained even as the walls between them gradually thinned. Quinn never pressed, never assumed, though Lily sometimes caught him watching her with a warmth that made her breath catch. It was in Arizona territory, nearly 6 weeks into their journey, that everything changed. They'd camped near a small settlement, planning to resupply before the long stretch of desert ahead. While Quinn negotiated for water barrels, Lily browsed the mercantile's meager offerings. She didn't notice the 3 men who entered behind her until one spoke her name. "Well, if it ain't little Miss Aldridge," drawled a voice she remembered from Hargrove's employ. "Been a long chase, but worth it to see the boss's face when we bring you back." Lily backed away, her hand moving to the revolver hidden in the folds of her skirt. "I'm Mrs. Winslow now. Whatever arrangement my father made with Mr. Hargrove is void." The men laughed, spreading out to block her escape routes. "Hargrove don't see it that way," said the tallest one, his hand resting on his holster. "And your pa's in no position to argue, 6 feet under as he is." The news struck Lily like a physical blow. "My father is dead." "Drank himself to death after losing the ranch," another confirmed with cruel indifference. "Now come quiet-like, and we won't have to hurt that cowboy husband of yours." Lily's fingers closed around her revolver. "I'm not going anywhere with you." What happened next was chaos. As the first man lunged for her, Lily fired, the shot going wide but creating enough distraction for her to dodge past him. She ran for the door, only to be caught by the second man. As they struggled, the third drew his weapon just as Quinn appeared in the doorway, alerted by the gunshot. Quinn's reaction was instantaneous. His first shot caught the armed man in the shoulder, spinning him around. His second forced the other man to dive for cover, releasing Lily in the process. "Get down," Quinn shouted, pulling Lily behind a barrel as bullets splintered the wood around them. The gunfight was brief but fierce, ending only when the settlement's sheriff and several armed citizens responded to the commotion. In the aftermath, with the would-be abductors disarmed and detained, Lily clung to Quinn, shaking with delayed fear and shock. "They said my father is dead," she told him as they returned to their camp, escorted by the sympathetic sheriff. "That Hargrove still means to claim me." Quinn's arm tightened around her shoulders. "I'm sorry about your father, Lily. Whatever his faults, I know you loved him." She nodded, tears finally coming for the complicated man who had raised her, however imperfectly. "As for Hargrove," Quinn continued, his voice hardening, "he'll have to come through me, and I meant what I said that first day. I'll never let you go." That night, after the sheriff had departed with assurances that the prisoners would stand trial for attempted kidnapping, Lily and Quinn sat by their campfire, the day's events hanging heavy between them. "We should leave at first light," Quinn said, checking his revolver before returning it to its holster. "Put as much distance as we can between us and those men in case they have friends nearby." Lily nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. The confrontation had crystallized something she'd been feeling for weeks, but hadn't fully acknowledged. "Quinn," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "When that man grabbed me today, my first thought wasn't for myself, it was that I might never see you again." She met his gaze across the fire. "I think I'm falling in love with you." Quinn went very still, the firelight casting shadows across his features. For a moment, Lily feared she'd misread everything between them, the growing closeness, the lingering glances, the comfortable silences. Then he moved, circling the fire to kneel before her. "Lily," he said, taking her hands in his, "I fell in love with you watching you stand up to your father and Hargrove that day at my cabin. Every day since has only made me love you more." He reached up, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I didn't want to press you to make you feel obligated because of our situation. I wanted you to have the freedom to choose." "I'm choosing now," Lily whispered, leaning into his touch. I choose you, Quinn Winslow. Not because you saved me, but because of who you are." Their first kiss was tentative, a question asked and answered in the gentle press of lips. The second was a confirmation, deeper and more certain. By the third, they'd found a language all their own, written in touch and breath and the quiet sounds of discovery. That night, husband and wife in truth as well as name, they remade their vows in the privacy of their wagon, promises whispered against skin, sealed with caresses that spoke louder than words. Dawn found them entwined, Lily's head on Quinn's chest, his arm wrapped protectively around her even in sleep. As the first light filtered through the canvas, Lily watched her husband's face, peaceful in repose, and marveled at the journey that had brought her here from a tearful flight from her father's house to this moment of profound belonging. The road to California still stretched before them, with all its uncertainties and challenges. Hargrove remained a shadow in their wake, his obsession a threat they couldn't dismiss. But as Quinn stirred, opening his eyes to smile at her with such tenderness it made her heart ache, Lily knew with absolute certainty. Whatever came next, they would face it together. 5 years later, Quinn and Lily Winslow stood on the porch of their rebuilt cabin in the Colorado Valley, watching their 3-year-old daughter chase Rusty's pups across the yard. San Francisco had been good to them. Quinn's natural skill with horses had secured him a position at a prestigious stable, while Lily's eye for fashion had indeed found her work with Quinn's cousin, eventually leading to her own modest dressmaking business. But the mountains had called them home once news reached them of Theodore Hargrove's downfall. His financial empire had collapsed under investigations of fraud and corruption, followed by his arrest for the murder of his fourth wife, who, unlike her predecessors, had left evidence of his crimes. They'd returned to find Quinn's cabin weathered but standing, the land waiting patiently for their return. With their California savings, they'd rebuilt and expanded a proper ranch house now stood where the modest cabin had been, with room for their growing family and the guests they occasionally welcomed from the nearby town that had risen in Willow Creek's place. Any regrets? Quinn asked, slipping his arm around Lily's expanding waistline, their second child due before winter. Lily leaned into her husband's embrace, remembering the terrified young woman who had once run barefoot across this very land, and the cowboy who had promised never to let her go. "Not a single one," she answered truthfully, turning her face up for his kiss as their daughter's laughter rang across the valley, the sweetest music of their shared life. Built one choice, one day, one love at a time.